Hey, it's Carl Forehand, one of the hosts on the Desert Sanctuary and also the Unlearning Curve podcast. This was recorded with our Unlearning Curve podcast hosts and also with Megan Benninger, who has a lot of experience in how cults work and how abuse happens and what to do for survivors and things like that. Her and her husband, Dom, run the Baptist Accountability Database and are very helpful. So these next two episodes will air both on the Desert Sanctuary and the Unlearning Curve podcast. So I hope you tune in and watch whichever one of those you want to. These episodes arise from a situation that happened in 2024, but it also kind of happened in 2023 with the Tony Jones incident and the Theology Beer Camp. And nothing really was done about that. It also involved the new Evangelicals and Tim Whitaker. But Tim had a scandal of his own last year when he was accused of being abusive towards an employee. And then a report by Net Grace was done, a 94-page report. And then the past few weeks have been listening and reading that report and then seeing how Tim and the new evangelicals respond to that report. And it hasn't been that good. And so Megan and I and JD and Stuart gathered together to talk about those issues and maybe more about a way forward instead of just this immediate situation.
Although many crave truth and understanding, the systems we engage with often inhibit genuine freedom in our daily lives. As we distance ourselves from organized religion, patterns emerge. We feel that recognizing these issues requires us to examine every facet of our lives, such as toxic leadership, toxic or dangerous organizations, our mental health, the things we learn or unlearn on the journey. Regardless of your belief system, we encourage you to unlearn anything that does not serve you well. This will promote healing and reveal a new path forward. JD Forehand is a son of a preacher and an overseas educator. Stuart Deloney is a former pastor and blogger podcaster at Snarky Faith. Carl Forehand, a former pastor, runs the Desert Sanctuary, a home for spiritual nomads, with his wife Laura. Disclaimer: we see ourselves as practitioners on a journey of discovery rather than as experts. While we strive to share our experiences and the lessons we are unlearning transparently, we will connect you with professionals when necessary, and trusted guides will arrive as needed. Please send Carl or Stuart your thoughts, concerns, and necessary updates. You can also reference our Facebook page, The Unlearning Curve.
Welcome again to the Unlearning Curve. I'm Stuart Deloney, and I'm joined with Carl Forehand, hopefully JD Forehand at some point. And today we are sitting down with Megan South Benninger to talk about religious abuse. Megan and her husband run the Baptist Accountability Database. Welcome, Megan. And I got the last name wrong, didn't I?
Oh,
Benninger.
it's totally fine.
Benninger.
Yep, totally fine.
I could have rolled with it and never made an issue of it, but we're going to be talking about spiritual abuse today, so it's probably best that I apologize when I'm wrong.
Thank you so much.
It's a weird thing that men can do.
But I need to see real change, Stuart. Don't do it
again. Sorry.
Yeah, Megan and I are friends, and we tend to be partners in crime, so to speak. That we kind of talk behind the scenes about things that are going on and try to do what we can. Megan's been through a lot in the last year or two, so I'm grateful that she's here and provide her expertise in a lot of different ways. And she has recorded her story on her website too. We had the video from the Leaning Forward conference, and Megan's story is really powerful. I encourage you to listen to that, and also someday meet her husband. He works hard and he's not available as much as we are, but let's go. So what we want to do today is we want to talk about I don't know why I'm laughing. It's because I looked at Stuart and he makes me laugh. Uh, and sometimes you got to laugh. I think a little bit almost purposefully in times like these and the way this kind of stuff triggers us sometimes. But, our evangelical we want to talk about is the new evangelical, the face of the new evangelicals, Tim Whitaker. And we'll, in a sense, I guess maybe it's not that we're really talking about him. It's just that he's the current example. I mean, this kind of stuff just keeps on. Megan and I had interviewed them before, but when we really worked together, the last time was with the Tony Jones incident in 2023, where Tony was being platformed at the Theology Beer Camp, which I refer to as the Theo Bros. So the Theo Bros were holding a conference, and Tony Jones was there. Tony was a accused abuser from way back in 2009 in the I'm not sure what that movement was called, the Emerging
Church or Emergent Church. It switched names.
Yeah, where he was essentially the leader of that for a while, or the co-leader, and Paget and those guys. And he was accused of assaulting his wife, but also he was known to have a spirit wife that he courted while he was still married to his wife, all the while calling her batshit crazy, right? Do I have Greg? I get him mixed up with Greg Locke sometimes, but tomato. So,
weirdly.
So when some people spoke up, namely Megan wasn't it one of the instigators of that, and I say instigator in a positive way, and also here comes JD, but one of the first to say, well, what about all these? Because I was in that group. I'm an author. There's a lot of people in there deconstructing, supposedly, or halfway, or whatever. But it was a place, where authors can be in there and get some exposure, talk, and have relationships and so on, where you sell more books or whatever. So Pete Enns, all of those guys were in there. Tom Ward, and even probably Trip Fuller, who ran the beer camp, and so on. So when Megan and others spoke up and said, listen, what do you have to say about this? And we really just wanted Tom or Pete or Tim, and Tim ran the New Evangelicals group, to acknowledge this and acknowledge those survivors that were essentially, I would say, clamoring, begging for someone to say something about this and say how it's going to affect the survivors. Most of them opted for private conversations, just like with the reporter this time, who got numerous phone calls from Tim. I got a couple of phone calls from Tim and messages from him and so on, him trying to head this off at the pass. So I don't know what kind of effect we had last time, in 2023 with that incident, but Tim was definitely involved in that conference and definitely promoted it and so on. But after about 5 minutes of research, he released a video, which his board later made him take down. And so that was kind of the setup to that. And then this year, which really happened last year in 2024, about a year after the first time, Tim had a complaint from an employee who is paying about $3,500 a month to produce videos and so on. We've spoken to her. She's known as RV1 in the report, but when we came to know about it, there was a Net Grace report released, a 94-page document in February, or rough draft in February, and released in around March 9th or March 4th. Right, yeah. Released on February 11th as a draft, but on March 4th, the board of the New Evangelicals got that report, and for a couple of weeks, they didn't say anything or talk to anybody about it, and wouldn't respond to questions about it. So eventually, it's called TNE Reckoning, was released, and those were the two people that were affected the most by what was happening. So in the report, it's called RV1 and W1 for witness one. And I think it's okay to say their names. So Adele and Sherry, we've talked to Adele. We talked for about an hour and a half the other night, and I just want you to know what she said. This is one thing she says I hope everybody knows. She said, "I'm a human being." She said she wanted everybody to know that. You can just see that they'll post a statement online, and they've stopped now posting online, but they would post and then they'd take a day off. And Megan and everybody here can probably relate to that. It's taxing on you, because people attack you. People come back and attack you. So we want to look at that today, at that incident where, and Megan, maybe you can fill in some of the gaps that I didn't highlight here. But so over the past few weeks, quite a few articles that came out. Rick Pidcock, who some will eventually get to talk to, but he did some investigative reporting on everything, and he did a great job. Released 2 different articles, and then other people followed suit. And so there's quite a few articles out there about the incident, about the abuse that involved reckless driving, and more than anything, not necessarily that one event, but just what followed and how everything happened after that. There's, not really any accountability, but they're relying on that Grace report, which pointed out what they were doing wrong, and we want to admire them for doing that. But now it's like, well, it wasn't that bad of an incident. It wasn't that, but so the cover up and the just dismissing has become quite troublesome.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are at the kind of the end of that event, and we want to look back on it. And
Yeah.
Stuart, I don't know if you hope you don't mind me saying that you just a minute ago said this has triggered you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a woman, right? And you're not directly involved, but I think that's what people don't understand, right?
I think it's being in situations, it's in power dynamic situations, especially within religious institutions, whether they're church or not. But it's kind of that power dynamic where you are stuck in a place. You need this for your job and for what you're doing, and you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. And there's a lot of churches I've been in and worked for where you end up having someone that is like a narcissist in a top role position. And you either see others that will just learn how to deal with it and live with just kind of the grind of it. And those that speak up against it are the ones that get ostracized and pushed out and called crazy, just so the machine can continue to move forward. And yes, I've been there, and it can be very, very painful because your faith is kind of wrapped up in it. The power dynamics of being stuck and being powerless to someone that has the power of the machine behind them, whether it's a ministry or a church. And then just on top of that, there's community wrapped in with it as well, too. You're a part of a community, and you speaking out, and then the machine pushing back against you, you get isolated, and the machine moves you out of the way so they can continue on to keep doing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot.
We always say the organization comes first, and it always will. No matter if that's a volunteer organization or the corporation or the church or maybe even your women's Bible study, the organization comes first.
Yeah. And I think the machine isn't going to stop ever. And I mean, that's a negative view, but I think that our best bet is educating followers, like those of us who, tend to want an organization and want something like that. And I think of, now I know this is a more extreme abuse situation, but when we think of child sex abuse, it's experts have come to the best way to prevent this is obviously we're going to watch our kids. We're going to try to put safety measures in place, but we have to educate the kids. Like, this is not safe touch. This is, you need to tell if something happens. We don't keep secrets, things like that. I feel like educating people about how this happens is our best bet for fighting this, that it keeps happening. I don't have a lot of hope that the people that rise on these platforms are going to ever get this.
Yeah. And I watched some of the comments from the people inside the group, kind of outside the group, talking about, responding on other platforms. And they just kind of, it feels like this is their situation. The group promised them, if you've been hurt by evangelicalism, then come to the new evangelicals and we'll protect you. And the bottom line is they haven't for, at least the 2 years I've kind of been following it. I haven't seen them actually protect, but those people say, well, this group has 300,000 followers on Instagram or something like that. So this is the big group. This is who I've got to stay with. When we talked about the addiction of religion with the guy that's going to be on our other podcast pretty soon, he said, it's the high of righteousness. So that's the allure of the group is the high of righteousness. If I'm associated with this group, this is obviously the right group because, it says new evangelicals even. It's got the right title, right? But it also promises to help me, and it's big, it's popular. You have a charismatic leader. People like to hear his stuff. Of course they do, because it's entertaining and he's an entertainer and he's charismatic and those kind of things. But their hope is this is my high, this is my righteousness. This is how my ticket to a better life than we had in evangelicalism. But I'm just almost more, my thing is I'm more and more convinced that maybe it's those smaller groups, those relationships we have with other people that might be the ticket. The group, I don't know, is ever going to be able to provide that. But we still have that debt to speak out when we see abuse and, in the political front, religious fronts, and all these different places. It's people are speaking up more and more, and leaders are finding it a little harder, at least, to be the patriarchy, the ultimate authority, and just bulldozing through people. But I mean, Megan knows this, and any abuse survivors know this. That just like Stuart pointed out, they're the ones that get bulldozed when they try to speak up. David Hayward found that out in the Tony Jones incident in 2015. He just made an odd not an odd comment, but a slightly negative comment against Tony Jones, and just got ate up by the patriarchy at that time and Tony's followers. So it's that high of righteousness. We want to be in the right group. We want to have the power. If we have the power, then we're important, and my life has meaning, and I know where to go. Somebody tells me which direction to go.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I do think it happens in smaller groups too. The cult that Dom and I were in back in our college days, I mean, that was a very small group. It started as a home Bible study. The same dynamics can happen. And families can be cults. The father is the patriarch, there's no limit on size, really. I mean, I think people are really focusing on how it happens in mega churches, but I personally think it happens in any size of group, and it's the dynamics and the hierarchies we need to learn to spot.
Yeah.
Not looking to the one person, or if there's that rising personality that just is having most of the space to talk and have their ideas heard. I think it's more important. And I know David Hayward, I heard some of his stuff back when I first started coming out of religion and deconstructing. And he pointed out diversifying your friendships. And that was new to me because I was always used to, I go to a church. Those are my people. It's my family. And I just kept repeating that pattern over and over, finding a group, my tribe, and I'm learning that, well, it's okay to have groups, too, but not to put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify, have friends in other groups and other voices in your life. Yeah.
Yeah. JD, welcome back. We're glad you got here.
Got here a little earlier than I was supposed to, actually.
Oh, okay. So, give me your take. You're kind of late to the party here, but what?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Megan was saying about hierarchies. When I was thinking about talking about churches and stuff, that's what my mind went to also as sociology teachers. That's the nature of hierarchies and the nature of a us versus them mentality, which is baked into our lizard brains. So yeah, I just totally agree with that.
Yeah. So
I think what Rick Pidcock, I just had a thought too, he pointed out that in the TNE situation, I thought it was interesting how he related it to church dynamics. Tim would be like the pastor. He's not a pastor in the situation, but he's like that, And the board members of TNE are like elders in a church. You can see the layers of who's the head honcho, who are the ones that, hold that up, and then the followers, and yeah.
I do think it's interesting that people seem to run back to that so much after going, I hate church, I hate all this stuff, and then they run out and then they go back and start the exact same thing.
Yeah. No, but this time it's different, right? Yeah. It'll be different this time.
Yeah, we have a little bit of distortion on the guitars this time. We're radical.
Yeah. We're the new evangelicals, don't worry.
Yeah. We're the new same old thing.
We're the less rapey Baptists.
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Our theology is better, but yeah.
Yes, that it's and sometimes it just gets really cringy really fast, and it's I remember let's see, I think that in 2023, I believe it was, when we went to the Wild Goose, it's out in Stewart's neck of the woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. And we remember just having kind of a sinking feeling there. First of all, it was mostly white people. There were gay and transgender people and things like that there. It was mostly white people, no old people, because they didn't have the accessibility figured out. And I heard they did the next year, so it was good. But just kind of a sinking feeling with all of those progressive leaders there who are just, and I think we got to be careful about this, not just they were just bashing evangelicals. There wasn't a lot of substance to the speeches I heard anyway. And it was kind of depressing. We're more inclusive. We understand we need to be more inclusive of LGBTQ people. We also need to let women speak and try to work to that, and all those things. But then we kind of get those two blocks behind us. We think we're totally different. But the organizational nature of things and how it works, there's still a hierarchy, and it's still hurting people. We haven't fixed the systemic problems just because we changed a couple of beliefs. Mm-hmm. So what did Tim do wrong? Because what he's saying now and what his wife is saying incognito as the big boulder or whatever she camouflaged.
So context, meaning that his wife created fake accounts and started commenting on people that were speaking out against the new evangelicals,
right?
Which then eventually came out that it was his wife doing it incognito, because usually that's what people that have nothing to hide do.
Yeah.
And she revealed that herself on her Instagram stories that she was giant. I think it was Giant Boulder.
It's just like a reality show some days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
you saying, what did he do wrong?
But of course, because she's one of the things she's doing is saying it's not that bad. It's not that big a deal.
Right? I think just admitting what you did. I just think because I think that it's this thing to where why people minimize it, because you can look at it at face value and go like, oh, okay, he like spazzed out. He was a rageaholic in a car. He micromanages. He's not organized. He yells at people. He has all these other problems. Sure. But it's that's a problem. And I've had bad bosses that have similar issues. You know, that's a personal bad issue here. But what happens is once someone mentions it, it's how the whole, like, everything else just swings into gear, just to be able to protect it. And I just find that it's fundamentally crazy, because a situation that they could have simply just said, yeah, we apologize. We're going to learn and grow from this. Like, before you even need to have an external report on it. Just do that. Grow as a person. Be a decent human being. Apologize, and then I don't know. Then none of all this other stuff happens. None of all the rest of this happens, and yeah, you move on. And that's what, like, honestly, having conflicts and conversations and relationships with people, working through those things simply, not just trying to silence people.
Yeah. I feel like Tim defends himself saying that did happen, that they did have so many conversations, but to Adele RV, I guess it was not authentic, and there was so much defensiveness that went along with it. And are you going to go public with this? Tim would say, and I mean,
yeah, is this off the record? And he said to several people, he tried calling influencers and so on. Anyway, there may be more to come on some of those fronts. But he also during this time, he entered into a relationship with April Ajoy, not physical, he's married, so hopefully not. But April is
podcasting relationship.
A podcasting relationship, and April is pretty well known. She also usually stands up for survivors. And I think maybe one herself. Megan, I'm looking at you because you may not.
I actually am not sure. I follow, some of her humorous things, but I don't know her story.
Yeah, she's pretty popular, and people seem to think she would stand up for him. So I
thought she would.
Yeah. So that was the general opinion. She's really popular. They entered into a podcasting situation, the Tim and April show, and he started that podcast with her without letting her know anything about the investigation that was ongoing into his behavior. So people were kind of trying to get messages out there, like, what does April think? Because their podcast is taken off and now this happened. What does she think? What's her stance on it? And unfortunately, much like Pete Enns and some of those guys, she decided to kind of say, well, I've looked into it and he's maybe, whatever, all the.
She said she believed the survivor, but also she didn't have a problem continuing her relationship, her podcasting with Tim.
Yeah, it's still on hold, but that was very disappointing. Yeah. But his part in that is he should have let her know before they started doing a podcast and so on. Anyway.
I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like, because I remember there's something like they debuted their podcast at number 20. I think that's it. That's why you keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm just being I'm being horrible in this, but I'm saying is, like, I mean, some of it's a financial decision. Platforms got to keep platforming. And yeah, I'm assuming that's the motivation.
Well, and I mean, I know with the new Evangelicals in 2023, when the first thing happened, I looked at their financial statement. They were taking on 120 grand at that time. I think it's more than that now.
It's about like this podcast, right?
Right. And I'm glad we've never monetized. And if we would have, it wouldn't have been a lot of money.
No, I think we're just good at losing money.
Yeah. So that is we're not as righteous, I guess, as them. But I mean, that was one of the things that Adele did for him was help him generate more viewers and more money. But that money coming in is something that's really hard to give up, I would say. And it probably had something to do with how Adele was probably hesitant in the beginning because this $3,500 was 3/4 of her income. And if I do the wrong thing, if I come on, if I say this too strongly to him, there's a power difference to him. He has the control, and he can take away my money. He can not let me do what I love to do, which she was apparently very good at.
And she said, I believe it was in Rick Pitcock's article, that she felt every time she brought it up, Tim did withhold more and more work and opportunities. Yeah. Whether he did it consciously or not, it happened.
So she complained to him. Nothing happened. And it just got worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she complained to the board and nothing happened. And I think it took more than just one attempt. And then finally they decided to do this report, which took 10 months. And I think they were just hoping it was going to go away. By the way, I'm a supporter of grace. People call it net grace. So it's grace, godly response, something.
Abuse in Christian environments.
Yeah, but it is formed by Boz, who is Billy Graham's grandson, and then Pete Singer now runs it. Very big fan of the group and what they do. They're very thorough. They provide that necessary investigation. Churches can still do that and then go the way of protecting the organization and the leader. But at least there's some accountability, hopefully, and it gets us headed in the right direction. So,
and that's another interesting dynamic, is that Tim supposedly initiated this investigation, like he requested it, which I think is fascinating. And people have been talking about that, like, why would he, and I think, personally, I think that he thought they would find him, innocent, that, yeah, maybe this was like misconduct, but nothing serious, and it would clear his good name. And that way, if, RV went public, he would have grace, their backup saying, oh, he was okay. That's my theory.
mm-hmm.
I don't have, knowledge that that's what happened, but it's a guess of something that could have happened.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot in Trump right now, that just always believes he can manipulate the situation.
Yeah.
And with the Tony Jones incident and this one, people that are reporting on this and speaking up, he's calling them, trying to influence their decision. And Rick described that as he hardly could get a word out when they were having a discussion, right? It's just more like someone berating you and trying to make you feel guilty. And, there was talk of, basically, we're bigger than you and what's going to happen to you and things like that. So it's not good stuff. JD, fill us in. What are we missing here?
I don't know. You guys are much more in the loop of evangelical stuff, church stuff in general. I hardly hear about it, but I mean, again, you see it all over the place. So I see it, just not in my local religions as much, I suppose. I'm just
this whole conversation is feeling like the Real Housewives of progressive Christianity, that we're just like, he said this and they did that. But I think right. that the funny thing that we get back to is in all of this, and you're right, the new evangelicals and Tim, all this stuff doesn't matter. We're just speaking like this is like a symptom of a larger problem. But what does any of this have to do with like Jesus's teachings and like changing, the world in a better way, in a tangible way? No, this is just about platforming and making money and stroking ego and continuing to just raise yourself up in all of this, which that's the sad thing that ministry is in so many places. It's cult of personality, and whoever can do it the best gets the most toys in the end.
Hey, it's Carl again. We decided to take a break at this point, and Megan, in the next section in the next episode is going to discuss how to enable abusers, which is a series of 8 steps that Megan developed, which closely mirror this situation once again.